The Tennessee Titans make a big-time move to get Dan Moore as their franchise left tackle. It's an incredibly risky move. I'm breaking down day one of Titans free agency on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland, Titans fans. Today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is a recap of day one of free agency. The Tennessee Titans make a splash move at offensive tackle and a risky move with Dan Moore. They add Cody Barton as well at linebacker, but they're also involved in the rumor mill with guys like Russell Wilson or Mac Jones. We'll discuss all of that, plus what signings I think the Titans need to make next. Before we dive into all of it, do want to thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there. Tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one, especially this time of year. There's breaking news all the time, roster moves, signings, trades. The draft's right around the corner, and I break down over 200 prospects. So, again, if you aren't subscribed, get subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. But the Tennessee Titans make probably their biggest move of free agency, and they sign offensive tackle Dan Moore to a 4-year, $82 million deal with $50 million guaranteed. Dan Moore is going to be 27 years old in September. He spent the first 4 years of his career with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's athletic. He's 6'5". He's 315 pounds. He's got really long arms, 34 and a half inches, super long wingspan that's over 80 inches. So he fits the athletic profile of what the Titans want. He's still a younger player that can develop. There's all of that. It's a lot of money, though. Now, I want to give you both sides of this. I was pretty skeptical of this move, if I'm honest with you. I think this was a risky move for the Titans to make. I think that Dan Moore is probably not worth the money that the Tennessee Titans paid, and I'll go into what I think he should have been paid. But at the end of the day, we got to look at this from both sides. Again, he's young. At only 27, he's athletic, he's long, he's durable, he's played 16 games, 17 games, 16 games, 17 games, so he plays, and that's the common thread between both the moves that the Tennessee Titans have made so far in free agency is they're guys who are dependable and actually play. If you look at the analytics, he was top 7 in the NFL in pass block win rate, 92.5%. So on 92.5% of his pass blocking opportunities, he won the rep. So that's pretty good. You know what I mean? He was 23rd best in run block win rate, 76.2%. JC Latham was 27th in the NFL. So Dan Moore a little bit ahead of JC Latham. And his pressure rate at 4.2%, very low for an offensive tackle in the NFL. So if you look at those things, you say he's got the right body type. He's still a younger player that can get better. He can be an answer for the Titans for multiple years. He's got some good analytics, but there is a downside here to Dan Moore that is hard for me to ignore at the end of the day. Last year, ask yourself this: who gave up the most sacks in the NFL last year? The answer is Dan Moore, the franchise left tackle that the Titans just gave $21 million a year. Now, the instant rebuttal to that is Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, like Will Levis, are terrible for an offensive line. And most of those sacks probably aren't 100% on him. And I posted every single sack that he gave up last year on all of my social media accounts and the Tic Tac Titans YouTube channel. And some of those are on the quarterback play at the end of the day, but some of them aren't. And you could say, well, he had to go up against Myles Garrett and Trey Hendrickson 4 times a year. Well, I'm sorry, but Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson and Josh Hines-Allen and Travon Walker, and you play great edge rushers every single week in the NFL. Just because you don't have those edge rushers in your division doesn't mean that you're not going to play good edge rushers. If your argument to me is, well, he's only bad against good players, Well, that's not a player that you want to pay $21 million a year to. Again, last year, 12 sacks, 41 pressures, 5 penalties. Over his career, he's given up 34 sacks, 181 pressures. He has an issue with his hands. He's not good at punching, so it's easy to get through his shoulders, whether it be beating him to the inside or beating him to the edge with speed. He could be better with better technique. And if you have Bill Callahan coaching him, maybe you get the best out of him. But I talked to some people in Pittsburgh, and they're shocked that the Titans paid this kind of money for Dan Moore, a guy who, I remind you, the Steelers drafted offensive tackles first round in back-to-back drafts so that they could get rid of Dan Moore. And the Titans went and paid him more money than Ronnie Stanley. The Titans paid him more money than Ronnie Stanley, or comparable money at least. A guy like Jalen Moore, who went to the Kansas City Chiefs for $15 million a year. That's the kind of money that a guy like Dan Moore should be making. A low-end, bottom-level starting offensive tackle. And the Titans paid him more money a year than Lane Johnson is getting. Right now, Dan Moore's average annual value is in between Jordan Mailata, an All-Pro, and Lane Johnson, one of the best offensive tackles of the last 20 years and a Hall of Famer. He's getting paid in between those. So if they paid Dan Moore $12 million, $15 million, I might feel better about this. But saying we need instant offensive line help and then signing the guy who gave up the most sacks in the NFL last year, to me, it would be like paying Andre Dillard or Dennis Daly or Nicholas Petit-Ferrer $20 million a year. Now, Dan Moore is a better player than those players. No doubt about it. He is better than those guys. But is Dan Moore going to turn this offensive line from bad to good? You have 2 first-round picks now. You have Cushenberry on a high-end deal, 4-year, $50 million. You have Dan Moore, 4-year, $80 million now at left tackle. That's 4 massive assets on the offensive line. There is no doubt about it. There is no question about it. There are no excuses. This offensive line has to be good next year. 2 top-end first-rounders, 2 top-of-the-market contracts. This offensive line has to be really good next year, or this is insane. You put that many resources to the offensive line, awesome. They could still sign Will Freeze, which we'll talk about at the end of the show, who I think they need to go after next. Jevon Holland, looking at you. But again, this could work out if Bill Callahan gets the best out of an athletic guy who could play his best football over the next few years. But now you ask yourself, you're moving JC Latham to right tackle. Last year, Bill Callahan told us he thinks JC Latham is a left tackle in the NFL. 1 year later, after Bill Callahan told us, and the franchise told us, and the coach told us, and the organization told us that JC Latham could be a franchise left tackle, 1 year later, they abort mission. Nope, he's got to go back to right tackle, and we need to sign a left tackle immediately. I don't care what you have to say about this move. That reality that it took 1 season for them to give up on Latham as a left tackle and move him back over to right tackle after selling that he was a left tackle all year last year, that's not a good look here. That's not good. The Titans are admitting they were wrong about JC Latham being a franchise left tackle. Because if JC Latham is a franchise left tackle, you don't move him for Dan Moore. So JC Latham isn't a franchise left tackle. He's a right tackle, which is still very, very important. But right tackle is not left tackle. It's just not. And Dan Moore has never played right tackle. College, he was only a left tackle. NFL last 4 years, only left tackle. Adam Schefter reported it. Local media is reporting it. Dan Moore is the left tackle of the future. Dan Moore is the franchise left tackle, and JC Latham is being moved to right tackle. So my skepticism of this deal for Dan Moore in general, added on to what it means for JC Latham and what the franchise thinks of him, I'm sorry, guys, but the rest of the NFL is laughing at the Titans for doing this. And even if it does work out, and even if Dan Moore is the best version of himself, it's still just an average starting left tackle. And the more likely outcome is that he's a bad starting left tackle, which is what he was for the Steelers for 4 years. So I'm sorry, I'm just skeptical of this one. But the other moves the Titans made today, I like a lot. So let's talk about them. Do want to let you guys know, though, that today's episode is sponsored by Betterhelp. Taking care of your mental health, maybe more important than ever right now, can feel like a big investment, but it's just as important as taking care of your body. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session. But with BetterHelp, you can save up to 50% per session. BetterHelp offers a flat fee for weekly online therapy sessions, making professional support more accessible and affordable. With over 30,000 therapists and over 5 million people helped, it's the world's largest online therapy platform. You spend money on gym memberships and healthy food. You need to invest in your mental well-being as well. Therapy isn't just for tough times. It can help you be the best version of yourself, and BetterHelp has helped me as well. Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Titans fans, let's continue today's day one free agency recap. We talked about the big move that the Tennessee Titans made. It'll probably be their biggest move of free agency. I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm waiting on one other big move that I think could be coming right around the corner, and we'll talk about that at the end of the show as I look forward to what's left in free agency. But outside of the Dan Moore move, which again, it could work out. I gave you the pros. I gave you the cons. I'm skeptical. That's all. But I want to say one more thing about the Dan Moore move with the JC Latham relation. You put Dan, so right now, the Tennessee Titans offensive line is a disaster at right tackle and is only okay at left tackle. JC Latham was like the 20th, 21st, 22nd best left tackle in the NFL last year. He'll probably take some steps forward this year, but you have okay left tackle play and disaster right tackle play. With Dan Moore, you're going to get okay left tackle play again, and then hopefully really good right tackle play with JC Latham. So if you want to know why the Titans would do this, you have to overpay in free agency. When you're a terrible team, you have an extra tax where you got to pay more to get these guys to come play with you. That's in play. But in theory, JC Latham could be one of the best right tackles in the NFL. So if you just get okay left tackle play with great right tackle play, that'll ultimately be better for your offensive line than horrific right tackle play and okay left tackle. The Titans are hoping they made two positions on the offensive line better with this one. I just question the price tag. If it was $15 million and a year and 30 to 40 million guaranteed, I'd probably feel a little bit more comfortable with it. But at the end of the day, that's the move, Dan Moore at left tackle. But the Titans also signed Cody Barton, linebacker from the Denver Broncos. Now, Cody Barton, in my opinion, is an upgraded version of like a Jack Gibbons role. I'm not comparing him to Jack Gibbons as a player, although there are some loose parallels there. But if you wanted a starting level version of Jack Gibbons, you would get it in Cody Barton. That basically that role. You're still going to have Kenneth Murray. As of right now when I'm recording, Kenneth Murray has not been cut by the Tennessee Titans. So if they're keeping Kenneth Murray, then you're going to have Cody Barton playing right next to him. So Cody Barton has been in the NFL for 6 years. And he's only missed 4 games in 6 years. Remember I said there was a common thread? Dan Moore does not miss games. Dan Moore does not miss games. Cody Barton does not miss games. And His last 3 years as a starting linebacker, he's had 136 tackles, 121 tackles, 106 tackles. So he's a very productive player. He had some athleticism to him. He had an 8+ RAS score. He's not an athletic freak, but he's not, Jack Gibbons is nowhere near as good of an athlete as Cody Barton is. So that's the big differentiator right there. Barton really is a guy who can get downhill. He's such a sure tackler. Cody Barton does not miss games, and he does not miss tackles. Okay? He does not. He's not great in man coverage. You don't want him guarding a running back or guarding a tight end in one-on-one, but Cody Barton is a smart and instinctual zone coverage guy. The Titans play more zone coverage anyway with their cover 4 mans and their, cover 2 and their different zone coverages. They run cover 3 as well. The Titans run way more zone coverage than they do man coverage. So Cody Barton is a fit from that standpoint. I think he'd be better in coverage than a guy like Kenneth Murray. So now you have Kenneth Murray who can be your downhill hammerhead. And then you have your Cody Barton who can be your tackle machine. Think, if there's a lead blocker coming down the hole, Kenneth Murray takes him on one-on-one. And then the running back comes through the hole and Cody Barton comes over and makes the tackle. That's what I'm envisioning for the Tennessee Titans. And look, linebacker isn't a great spot in the NFL draft. So addressing it this way is totally understandable. It's $21 million for 3 years. That's $7 million a year. It's probably only $14 million guaranteed. It's basically a little bit cheaper from the Kenneth Murray deal, which is exactly what the Titans should do. $6 to $7 to $8 million a year is what your average low-end NFL starter is going to make in the NFL. That's what I want to pay Nicholas Westbrook-Ikhine. He's a low-end starter depth guy. That's what Cody Barton is. So now you don't have to force Cedric Gray or James Williams in their second year into a starting role. You have 2 veterans that you can count on to play those roles. The Titans also brought back Sebastian Joseph Day. They also brought back Darrell Baker, and they also brought back Andrew Rupcich. If you listened to the Locked On Titans free agency preview, if you listened to the Locked On Titans off-season roadmap episodes, then you would know that I thought the Titans should bring back Sebastian Joseph Day on a 1-year, $5 million contract, just like what he got last year. And what did the Titans bring him back on? A 1-year, $5 million contract, up to $7.5 million with incentives, but it's $5 million guaranteed. Darrell Baker, bring him back. He's a free agent, exclusive rights. Titans offer him a 1-year deal, bring him back. Now your cornerback room is set. Maybe you add an undrafted free agent or a couple to compete, but you don't need to go in free agency and get a cornerback or even draft a cornerback if you don't have to, outside of maybe Travis Hunter with number 1. Because now you have Snead, Awuzie, Roger McCreary, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., and Darrell Baker. You have your 5 cornerbacks. You're good there. So Darrell Baker back on a veteran minimum deal. Andrew Rupcich, add some more interior offensive line depth. 1-year exclusive rights free agent deal. He's back. Morgan Cox, the Titans long snapper. I've said, let Morgan Cox long snap until he doesn't want to. He's 40 years old. Who cares? Let him keep going. So with everything that the Tennessee Titans have done on day 1 of free agency, so far, it's 8:20 p.m. Eastern. The Titans could still make more moves. I think they're going to make more moves. And I'm going to tell you what I think those moves are going to be to end today's show right now. But I got to say, B- for the Tennessee Titans on day 1 in free agency with all the moves that we've talked about so far. I got like a C on the Dan Moore move, C+. I got like a B on the Cody Barton move. Sebastian Joseph Day is a B+. Darrell Baker and Andrew Rupcich are Bs for me. So I'm going to go with a B- grade for the Titans. So far on day 1 of free agency, what should the Titans do next? I'm going to tell you that right now. Do want to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Titans fans, let's cap off today's Day 1 free agency recap edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Again, a lot of you guys who listen to the show, watch the show, you're not subscribed. I put out free Monday through Friday daily Tennessee Titans content. I put out short content. I put out film content. Get subscribed. It's free. What are you doing? You got to be the smartest and most up-to-date Tennessee Titans fan that you could possibly be. And you're going to do that here with Locked On Titans and all of my content in general, if we're honest. But with that being said, let's turn the page now. What comes next for the Tennessee Titans? What can they do now? The Dan Moore contract, $4 million, 4 years, $82 million. It's only $50 million guaranteed, and it's all in the first 2 years. I bet this is actually like a 2-year, $50 million deal. That's probably what it's going to end up being. The Titans can get out of the deal with a little bit of dead money in year 3. But regardless of that, the cap hit is probably only going to be around $10 to $15 million, somewhere in there. The Titans had $60 million in cap space, so they're probably down to, 45 or so there. You bring in Cody Barton. He's probably $4 million to $5 million in cap space. Sebastian Joseph Day, probably 3.5. Darrell Baker, Andrew Rupsich combining for about 2.5. The Titans are probably down $21 million in cap space, maybe a little bit less, maybe like 18 to 21 is where I expect them to be. So the point I'm trying to make is the Titans still have a ton of cap space and a ton of opportunity to make big moves. And where do they need the big moves the most? To me, obviously, you got to talk about quarterback first and foremost. We heard from Buck Rising that the Titans are interested in Mac Jones and Zach Wilson. Ooh, gross. Not happy to hear that. But Zach Wilson got signed by the Miami Dolphins, so that leaves Mac Jones. Sam Darnold goes to the Seattle Seahawks. Justin Fields goes to the New York Jets. So that leaves the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New York Giants and the Minnesota Vikings. And it sounds like those folks are fighting over Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. I think Aaron Rodgers ultimately goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Russell Wilson ultimately goes to the New York Giants. But we're also hearing rumors from Connor Hughes. I'm getting the names mixed up. I apologize. Been a long day. I think it's Connor Hughes who reports on the New York football teams. He said that the Tennessee Titans are in on Russell Wilson, and they're looking at him. So right now it sounds like the Titans are looking at Russell Wilson, Mac Jones. Aaron Rodgers, still potential, but it sounds like Rodgers is going to go to Minnesota, Pittsburgh, or the Giants with an opportunity to start. Again, it's never sounded like the Titans are interested in Aaron Rodgers, although I think that they should be, personally. But realistically speaking, Jacoby Brissett, Jameis Winston. Those are my favorite two options because at this point, Darnold goes to Seattle, Justin Fields goes to New York. The Browns traded for Kenny Pickett, and Adam Schefter said, I'm not confident that the Browns are going quarterback at number 2 like I was a couple weeks ago. The Browns are probably out on taking quarterback. They're probably going to go Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter. And then the Giants are probably going to be able to wait at number 3 and still get Shedeur Sanders and actually get a quarterback, making them less likely to trade up. So while Darnold and Fields going to different teams and Rodgers and Wilson potentially going away from the Giants, like if Wilson goes back to the Steelers, Rodgers goes to the Vikings, or, at this point, it looks like one of Rodgers or Wilson is going to go to the Giants, removing the leverage unless the Titans get Russell Wilson, and then Rodgers goes to the Steelers. Then the Giants are left with absolutely nobody. The Titans can trade back. I guess you could look at it from that point. But to me, again, I think Cam Ward is the pick for the Tennessee Titans. Cam Ward had his visit with the Titans on Friday. I think it was Thursday or Friday of last week. Excuse me. And from that moment, it gets me so excited. If you guys can't tell how hype I am for all this stuff, this is the type of passion and energy you're going to get every single day of the year from me here at Locked On Titans. But I think after that meeting with Cam Ward, the Titans decided we're sticking and picking and we're taking Cam Ward. It's what we have to do. There are no good options available to us in free agency. And that is why the quarterback market started to move the way that it did. And that's why we're starting to hear, that the Giants aren't certain that they're going to be able to trade up for a quarterback. So I think it's kind of changed things. So with that being said, if the Titans draft Cam Ward, I want Jacoby Brissett, I want Jameis Winston. You could say Russell Wilson. If you wanted to go with Russell Wilson and bring Cam Ward into the franchise and have him not have pressure to start, go with the veteran right away to evaluate Brian Callahan and then go to Cam Ward midway through the year or go to Cam Ward next year, I would accept that. I just don't think that's as realistic. I think if the Titans get Russell Wilson, they're trading down. If the Titans get Jacoby Brissett or Jameis Winston, they're sticking and picking. If the Titans go out and get Mac Jones, I think they're trading down. So Russell Wilson, Mac Jones, trade down. Jacoby Brissett, Jameis Winston, even like a Joe Flacco, Cam Ward. That's how I see the decision tree right now, but I ultimately think it is going to be Cam Ward who the Titans get. But outside of quarterback, I think that safety becomes super important. It's an okay safety class. I don't think it's a super good safety class. And I think the Titans now are going to have to address quarterback with the number 1 pick. And then they're going to have to look at wide receiver and edge. That has to be the top 3 that they're looking at right now. Quarterback, wide receiver, and edge. If you could take quarterback number 1, trade down in the second round, then take a wide receiver and an edge rusher with the second round pick that you traded down for, and then the third round pick that you acquire, then that leaves you with your day 3 picks. And I don't think that you can count on getting a starting safety in day 3. So go out and get Jevon Holland right now. Okay. And I think the Titans are going to be able to get Jevon Holland because at the beginning of the day, it was said that the 4 teams that were in on Jevon Holland were the Panthers, the Colts, the Commanders, and the Titans. Well, the Colts got Cam Bynum. The Panthers got Trevon Moehrig. So that leaves the Washington Commanders and the Tennessee Titans as the 2 teams interested in Jevon Holland. Well, the Washington Commanders, if you live under a rock and didn't see it, traded for Laramie Tunsil. What are the Houston Texans doing? You went from 4 bad offensive linemen to 5. What are they doing? But they trade Laramie Tunsil to the Washington Commanders. That's going to cost the Commanders. And the Commanders also made some other moves on the day. They just traded for a lot of money with Deebo Samuel. You know what I mean? How many big splash moves can the Commanders make? I think that makes it most likely that the Tennessee Titans get Jevon Holland. And I think probably, maybe even, by the time you hear this episode, Jevon Holland could be reported going to the Titans. I think that's so likely now, and I would love that move for the Titans. Jevon Holland, again, safety from the Miami Dolphins, 25 years old, rangy, great athlete, 25 years old still. You don't get guys that young and this talented. He was a guy who was a potential all-pro early in his career. He's had some drop-offs as the Miami defense has dropped off, but he had a lot of good ball production early. He had 5 interceptions in his first 2 seasons, I think it was, a ton of pass deflections. He creates opportunities on the back end of the defense. And with Amani Hooker being on the last year of his contract, I think it's time to get a bona fide safety. And again, the draft class isn't great at safety. It's okay, but the odds of the Titans being able to devote a good enough draft pick to get a starter at safety in the draft this year, very unlikely with their needs at wide receiver, quarterback, and edge. So outside of safety, we move to interior offensive line. Again, if the Titans aren't going to be able to get a safety with a premium pick, they're probably not going to be able to get interior offensive line with a premium pick. Will Freeze is still out there. I am less confident that the Tennessee Titans will go get Will Freeze after they paid Dan Moore. I have thought the entire time that the Titans could only afford to have 1 big contract on the offensive line in free agency. It either needed to be at guard or it needed to be at offensive tackle. I thought they would pick guard and then go tackle for the draft and value, but it sounds like, or obviously they went tackle. So the Titans may need to go with a value free agent at guard. And I think bringing back Dylan Radins or better, Brandon Sheriff, 33 years old, played for Jacksonville. Sheriff is not a long-term answer, but he would be a cheap value veteran who you know you're going to get consistent professional offensive line play from. Either get Dylan Radins or get Brandon Sheriff on a cheap contract, and then maybe look to get an interior offensive lineman on day 3 of the NFL draft. I think that would make a ton of sense. You could still pay Will Freeze top of the market money at guard. I just don't think the Titans are going to spend that money anymore, because then you got Cush, Freeze, and more all on high-level free agent deals with JC Latham and Peter Skoronski on first-round contract deals. That's a lot of money on the offensive line for an offensive line that isn't great and is probably just good. So I just don't think the Titans can do that. Tevin Jenkins is another guy who I think will get money similar to that. Mekhi Becton is a guy who I don't think is a fit for the Titans because he needs a strong locker room and a strong culture. That's not what the Titans have right now. They're trying to build that culture and build that locker room. So for me, I would still like Will Freeze, but I don't think the Titans go that expensive at guard. I think bringing back Dylan Radins or bringing Brandon Sheriff into the mix as an older veteran, I think those moves make the most sense. Defensive line and edge still need help. Charles Omenihu, Tryon Shorenka, I think would be good options for the Titans. We saw Dio Adangbo, Darrell Taylor, Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Patrick Jones, Malcolm Kuntz all come off the board at edge on day 1. So Charles Omenihu, Joe Tryon Shorenka, Azeez Ujulari, Chase Young's still available, but I continue to hear that he's going to go back to the New Orleans Saints, and it's just cap stuff that they're working through. But I think Charles Omenihu and Azeez Ujulari at this point and Joe Tryon Shorenka would be the best lotto tickets at edge for the Titans. You're not going to get a great answer at edge now with the market. You probably weren't all along. Good edge rushers don't go on the market. So you got to take a value pick at edge rusher right now. And those are the options that I think make sense. Wide receiver. People are like, who is going to play wide receiver, man? Like, look, right now, options that I think make sense. Olamide Zaccheaus. I've been asking about him for a while. Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, maybe a Greg Dortch, one of those smaller slot guys who can also be a return man. They would make sense. Bring back NWI. I don't know if that's going to happen. The Titans might move on here. That would make sense. You got to bring back Ryan Stonehouse as well. That's something I expect to happen. But looking at wide receiver, the way that I feel now after watching the market play out, I think it's more likely that the Titans go after one of these veterans, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins. You know what I mean? There are more of them out there than I can even think of right now. But I think because the Titans can't have a good solution to wide receiver 2, they might as well give a 1-year contract to one of those guys and just have them come in and try to be productive. You're going to try to probably draft a wide receiver pretty high this year. Again, I think quarterback, wide receiver, and edge are the immediate 5 alarm fires that the Titans need to put out, especially if they get Jevon Holland. The only thing I really think they need to do is add those 3 positions, and they've done the best they can this offseason. But, you know, you're not getting that wide receiver 2 production from the small slot guys that I mentioned, Zaccheaus, Moore, Dortch. Like, you're not getting that there. So you might as well go pay like Keenan Allen or Amari Cooper like $12 to $15 million a year for one season and have them, like DeAndre Hopkins said, I'm going to prove to the league I'm still productive and get another big contract. Well, no, you're not, but we'll take it. We'll take a motivated you for right now. So that's where I'm at with the Titans. Interior O-line, defensive line edge, safety, wide receiver. That's where they have to go next. They have the money to do it. Let's see what kind of moves come on day 2. But no matter what happens, I'm going to be here to break it all down. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. If you're watching on YouTube, throw a thumbs up on the video. That's going to do it for today's Day 1 free agency recap edition. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.